Alright, Reddit, buckle up because this one is wild and I still cannot believe it happened the way it did. My name is Emily Carter. I am 26 years old, and I grew up as the so-called responsible little sister. My parents always called me the dependable one, the child who could be trusted to keep her head on straight, follow through with commitments, and not make life harder for anyone. Meanwhile, my older sister Jessica, who is 34 now, was always the star of the show. She was the child who got all the attention, the spotlight, and the drama, and when she had kids, two of them, Chloe, who is 8 now, and Tyler, who is 5, I somehow became the one holding the bag every single time. And when I say every single time, I mean it literally felt like I became her personal backup plan for everything. To give you the full picture, I was always close to my parents. When they needed errands run or someone to help out around the house, I was the one there without hesitation. When my dad's health dipped for a while and he needed someone overnight, I packed a bag and stayed at their place. I helped organize doctor appointments and even grocery shopped for them. I was always the reliable one, the helper, the person they knew would step up. Jessica, on the other hand, always seemed to be in her own world. First, it was sorority trips and vacations during her college years. Then, it was her wedding planning that took over every conversation for a year. And once she had kids, it felt like all of those responsibilities fell on me, as if being a younger sister meant I had signed up for unpaid childcare. When Chloe was born, Jessica called me constantly. At first, I thought it was because she wanted support, but quickly it became clear she just expected me to be her free babysitter. She would tell me, "You are so good with babies, you were made to do this," as if that was some kind of compliment rather than a justification for dumping responsibilities on me. I learned how to change diapers and heat bottles while she and her husband Mark went out on date nights. When Tyler was born, my role doubled, and it got to a point where I started missing out on my own life. One summer, I had tickets to see Hozier with my friends. I had been looking forward to that concert for months. That same afternoon, Jessica called me in tears saying that her babysitter had canceled and she and Mark already had non-refundable reservations for a fancy dinner. I told her I had plans, but she started crying harder and begged me to help. I caved. Instead of screaming my lungs out at a concert with my friends, I spent the night on her couch watching her kids throw popcorn everywhere while she had her dinner. She texted me later with a simple thanks, like I had not just missed out on something I had saved up for. Another time, she called me and asked me to watch the kids for an entire weekend because she and Mark had planned a wine tour in Napa. I had a work retreat that weekend, which was really important for networking and career growth. Jessica brushed it off and said, "One day you will thank me for the practice. It is good experience for when you have your own kids." I remember sitting there staring at my phone, realizing she genuinely thought she was doing me a favor by overloading me with her responsibilities. Except I did not want practice. I am not a parent, and I did not sign up for this. Years of this dynamic built up resentment in me, but I never confronted her directly. I tried to be the good sister. I tried to be the dependable one my family always saw me as. But things came to a head this spring when Jessica and Mark decided to go big for their anniversary. They booked an all-inclusive trip to Cancun, Ocean View Suite, the whole 9 yards. Thousands of dollars went into this trip, and instead of asking me if I was available or if I even wanted to watch the kids, Jessica dropped it on me like a chore. She said casually, "We will drop the kids off Friday morning. You will be fine." There was no pleas, no negotiation, nothing. Just an assumption that I would bend my life around hers yet again. The thing is, I already had plans. My best friends and I had been planning a Nashville trip for months. We had saved up, booked flights, and reserved a hotel. I was not about to cancel again just because Jessica thought I was her unpaid nanny. For the first time, I decided I was not going to let her steamroll me. That is when I came up with the idea. When Friday morning rolled around, Jessica showed up at my apartment with 2 suitcases, 2 kids, and her smug emergency credit card, which she handed over with the words, "Just use it for groceries or whatever the kids need." She kissed the kids goodbye, barely looked at me, and left for her vacation. I smiled and waved her off, and the second she was gone, I pulled out my phone and called a professional nanny service. A real licensed agency. It was expensive, yes, but Jessica had left me her credit card and told me to use it for whatever the kids needed. So, I decided what they needed was proper childcare. Enter Lauren, the nanny. She was incredible. Professional, kind, and organized. She came over every day for 5 days, cooked meals for the kids, kept the house spotless, and even helped Chloe with her math homework. She sent me text updates with pictures and detailed notes about their day. I was finally free to enjoy my own plans. Meanwhile, I was in Nashville having the time of my life. Rooftop bars, cocktails, live music, and line dancing, I finally felt like I was living my own life for once instead of being tethered to my sisters. Everything went smoothly until day 3 when Lauren, being responsible, reached out to Jessica directly to confirm the kids' schedules. Jessica had given me a written list of their daily routines, but Lauren wanted to double-check directly with the parents. That was when everything exploded. Jessica called me in a rage, screaming over the phone that she never authorized a nanny. She accused me of outsourcing her children and said I had no right to use her credit card for something like that. I calmly reminded her that she had dumped the kids on me without asking and that I had plans I was not canceling. She tried to cancel the service immediately, but the nanny agency had a cancellation policy. Once care began, you paid the full amount, and her card had already been charged thousands of dollars. When Jessica and Mark came back from Cancun, she stormed into my apartment and tore into me, yelling about how I ruined their budget, how I was manipulative, selfish, and even a thief. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "I told you I had plans. You dumped your kids on me without asking. I made sure they were cared for. You should be thanking me." The irony of the whole situation is that her kids adored Lauren. Chloe and Tyler were raving about her, telling Jessica that they liked the nanny better than Auntie Emily. Now Jessica is sulking and telling the whole family that I scammed her, while I sit here thinking that she finally just paid for what she should have been paying all along. So, the story did not just end with Jessica's tantrum in my apartment. I thought that after she blew up at me and called me every name under the sun, she would eventually cool off, realize she had overstepped, and maybe even apologize. That was wishful thinking. A week later, I got a call from my mom asking me to come over for a family meeting. I already knew what that meant. Jessica had clearly been crying to them, painting herself as the victim in this entire situation, and now I was about to be ambushed. I almost did not want to go, but I figured it was better to face it head-on rather than let her completely rewrite the narrative. When I walked into my parents' living room, I could feel the tension in the air. Jessica was sitting on the couch with her arms crossed, eyes red from crying, while Mark hovered protectively beside her. Mom looked concerned but calm, while Dad's expression was unreadable, which was a bad sign because Dad was usually the peacekeeper. As soon as I sat down, Jessica jumped in, going on about how I had betrayed her trust, how I had humiliated her, and how she and Mark were now dealing with a massive credit card bill because I decided to outsource childcare without her permission. I just sat there quietly, letting her talk, because I knew what I had was proof. When she finally stopped, I pulled out my phone and calmly laid out every piece of evidence I had. I showed them the text messages where I had told Jessica about my Nashville trip months in advance, the receipts from the nanny service, the messages Lauren had sent me with detailed updates, and even the note Jessica had written saying, "Use this card for groceries or whatever the kids need." I explained how I had honored her instructions exactly as she had given them, that she had never once asked if I was available or willing to watch the kids, and that she had dumped them on me as if I had no life of my own. Dad's jaw literally dropped as he read through the receipts. He looked at Jessica with this mix of disbelief and disappointment, and for the first time in my life, I saw him angry at her in a way that was not softened by fatherly patience. Mom sighed and admitted she actually admired how I handled the whole thing, saying it was impressive how I found a responsible, licensed nanny and ensured the kids were cared for. Jessica immediately started crying again, saying I should have canceled Nashville and prioritized family over a girl's trip, but Dad snapped. He told her flat out that I had been bailing her out for years, sacrificing my own plans and opportunities, and that it was time she started paying for childcare like a grown adult instead of expecting her younger sister to be her free babysitter. The room went silent after that. Jessica sat there glaring at me with tears streaming down her face. Mark's jaw was tight like he wanted to say something but thought better of it, and I just sat there feeling a mixture of vindication and exhaustion. I had never heard my dad speak to Jessica like that. She had always been his golden child, the one who could do no wrong, and now he was calling her out in front of all of us. Mom tried to smooth things over by suggesting they all take a breath and revisit this conversation later, but Jessica grabbed her purse and stormed out without a word, dragging Mark behind her. The fallout from that meeting was massive. Jessica stopped speaking to me completely. She unfollowed me on social media, blocked me on some messaging apps, and even went so far as to send an angry email to our extended family, painting herself as the victim and accusing me of being selfish and untrustworthy with her children. I was tempted to reply with the receipts, but I knew that would only escalate things. Instead, I let the silence speak for itself. Mark, however, was not silent. He sent me a text that was so long it looked like a manifesto. In it, he accused me of undermining their parenting, disrespecting their authority, and destroying their trust. He said they would never feel comfortable leaving the kids with me again. I stared at that text for a long time, partly amused and partly angry, because it was so ironic. I never asked to be their babysitter in the first place. They had made me their crutch for years, and now that I had drawn a boundary, they were acting like I had betrayed some sacred agreement. Jessica, of course, hates this. From what I have heard, she gets irritated every time Chloe or Tyler bring up Lauren's name, because it reminds her of the nanny bill she is still paying off. My parents, on the other hand, think it is hilarious. Mom even joked that Lauren should be on retainer because she was clearly worth every penny. Since all of this went down, I have been more firm about my boundaries. I told my parents I love helping out when I can, but I am done being anyone's default babysitter. To my surprise, they supported me completely. Dad even offered to help Jessica and Mark find a reliable sitter for the future so they stopped depending on me. Jessica, predictably, refused. She is still mad, still convinced that I betrayed her, and still playing the victim. I have stopped trying to convince her otherwise. Now I focus on my own life. I have been going out more, spending time with my friends, and enjoying the freedom I did not realize I had been sacrificing for years. Every now and then I will get a passive-aggressive text from Jessica, usually something about how family should come first, but I do not engage. I know she is mad because she has been forced to face the truth. Childcare is expensive, and she cannot rely on me to fill that role for free anymore. The funniest part of this entire saga is that while Jessica and Mark are stewing in their resentment, Chloe and Tyler are blissfully unaware of the drama. To them, the only takeaway from this entire situation is that they had an amazing week with an amazing nanny. And now, every time they see me, the first thing they ask is when they will see her again. Meanwhile, Chloe and Tyler keep asking when they'll see Miss Lauren again. You would think Jessica would have let it go after the nanny incident and the family meeting where Dad finally called her out, but apparently, her ego could not handle being embarrassed. About a month later, she found a way to try to get back at me, and of course, she made it as petty as humanly possible. Chloe's birthday was coming up, and I had assumed, like every year, I would be invited. I had been to every one of her parties since she was born, helped decorate, ordered cakes, and even paid for a bouncy house one year when Jessica forgot to budget for it. But this time, I got no invitation. Days passed, and while the rest of the family was chatting in the group text about what gifts to get Chloe, there was no mention of me coming. I figured maybe Jessica was still mad and wanted to cool off, but then I found out through my cousin that Jessica had told the family she didn't invite me because she didn't feel comfortable having me around her kids anymore. The family group chat exploded after that. People started assuming I had done something awful. My aunt even messaged me privately asking if I had yelled at Jessica or scared the kids somehow. I calmly explained what really happened, sent her the receipts from the nanny, and reminded her that Jessica had dumped the kids on me without asking. My aunt was floored, but the damage was already done. Jessica had successfully planted the idea that I was some sort of toxic influence, and now I was dealing with whispers and side conversations from relatives who only knew Jessica's version of the story. Then came the birthday dinner with Grandma. Grandma is the matriarch of the family, the one person who commands respect from everyone. She is sharp, brutally honest, and has a zero-tolerance policy for nonsense. Chloe's actual birthday fell on a weekday, so Jessica brought the kids over to Grandma's house for dinner. Most of the immediate family was there, including me, because Grandma had personally invited me, and no one dares say no to her. The tension was thick from the moment I walked in. Jessica made a point of acting icy, giving me clipped answers and avoiding eye contact, while Mark sat stiffly in his chair. I decided to keep my distance and just focus on talking to Chloe and Tyler, who were bouncing around happily in their party clothes. It was during dessert that everything unraveled. Grandma asked Chloe if she was excited for her birthday party that weekend, and Chloe, with all the innocence of an 8-year-old, said yes, but Mommy said Auntie Emily isn't coming. Why not? Miss Lauren said Auntie Emily paid for her to come, so why can't Annie come to my party? The entire room went silent. Forks clinked against plates, and all eyes turned to Jessica, whose face went beet red. Chloe looked confused, staring between her mom and me, because she clearly didn't understand why she had just said something explosive. Grandma's face hardened immediately. She turned to Jessica with a glare that could cut steel. Grandma has this way of commanding a room without even raising her voice, and when she's angry, you can feel it like a physical force. She asked Jessica if it was true that I had paid for the nanny during their Cancun trip, and when Jessica stammered that I used her card without permission, I calmly corrected her and said, "No, I used the card she gave me, exactly how she told me to." I could see Jessica's composure slipping as the truth started spilling out in front of everyone. Grandma did not hold back. She scolded Jessica in front of the entire family, saying she was punishing me for being responsible, for making a smart decision, and for ensuring her children were cared for. She said Jessica should be ashamed of herself for turning her own daughter's birthday party into a petty revenge tactic. You could hear a pin drop as Jessica sat there, humiliated, while Chloe and Tyler looked around, clearly sensing something serious was going on. Mark tried to interject, but Grandma shut him down so fast that he leaned back in his chair and said nothing else for the rest of the night. I sat there quietly, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and secondhand embarrassment. It was surreal watching the narrative flip completely in real time. For weeks, Jessica had been trying to paint me as some kind of villain who couldn't be trusted with her kids, and now she looked ridiculous. Everyone could see that she had lied, exaggerated, and tried to manipulate the family against me. Grandma's opinion carries weight with everyone, and after that night, the tide turned. People who had been giving me side eyes in the group chat suddenly started messaging me privately, apologizing for believing Jessica's version of events. My cousin even texted me later saying she couldn't believe how childish Jessica had acted. Jessica, of course, was furious. After dinner, she left in a huff, dragging Chloe and Tyler behind her while Mark shuffled awkwardly out the door. She barely said goodbye to anyone. I stayed behind to help Grandma clean up, and Grandma told me she was proud of me for standing up for myself and refusing to let Jessica walk all over me anymore. It was a weird feeling because I had spent so many years being the peacekeeper, trying not to upset Jessica or cause family drama, but now that everything was out in the open, I felt lighter. Over the next few days, Jessica's reputation in the family took a hit. She had always been the golden child, but people were starting to see through her behavior. My uncle even made a joke in the group chat about Jessica needing a nanny herself, and while it was a bit harsh, no one defended her. She didn't respond, which is rare for her because she usually thrives on attention. I knew she was embarrassed, but at this point, I was done trying to protect her feelings. Now, every time the family gets together, Jessica is noticeably quieter. She's not as smug as she used to be, and I think she's finally realizing that people aren't buying her act anymore. Meanwhile, I've been enjoying my peace. I still spend time with Chloe and Tyler, and they're always excited to see me, which drives Jessica crazy because she can't stand that they like me so much despite everything. I don't rub it in, though. I just sit back, smile, and let her stew in the consequences of her own actions. And during that chaotic dinner when Chloe accidentally blew up her mom's narrative, I did the only thing I could do to keep from laughing at the absurdity of it all. I just kept sipping my wine and stayed quiet. Here's where things got really interesting, because I thought the drama had finally fizzled out. Jessica was embarrassed. The family had stopped treating me like I was some villain, and I was finally enjoying a few weekends without unexpected babysitting duties. But the story wasn't done writing itself yet. About 2 weeks after the infamous birthday dinner, I got a message from Lauren, the nanny I'd hired during Jessica's Cancun getaway. I wasn't expecting to hear from her, so when her name popped up on my phone, I was curious. She said she'd been thinking about the week she spent with Chloe and Tyler because she'd never seen kids warm up to a nanny so quickly. She also mentioned that the agency was so impressed with how well she fit with the family that they offered Jessica a discount if she booked regular care with them. That piece of news alone was enough to make me laugh out loud. Jessica had spent weeks painting me as the villain for hiring a nanny, crying about how I'd betrayed her trust, and now the agency itself was offering her a long-term deal because of how well everything went. Lauren told me she'd spoken with Jessica directly, and while Jessica was polite, she could tell Jessica was swallowing her pride. Jessica asked questions about pricing and availability, and from Lauren's perspective, it was obvious Jessica was seriously considering it. Fast forward a month, and suddenly Jessica's weekends were a lot quieter too, which made me suspicious. I wasn't getting her usual frantic texts about urgent babysitting needs. She wasn't guilt-tripping me to rearrange my plans, and Mark wasn't sending me those long-winded messages about family obligations. For a while, I thought she was just avoiding me out of embarrassment, but then my cousin let it slip in a group chat that Jessica had hired a nanny. I asked, as casually as I could, if she was talking about a sitter for date nights, and my cousin said, no, like a real nanny, multiple days a week. Chloe says she's awesome. I couldn't stop laughing. Jessica had been so adamant that I betrayed her by hiring a professional nanny, yet here she was, quietly booking the same service on a regular basis because she didn't want to admit I'd been right all along. She never announced it to the family, never apologized for blowing up at me, and never admitted that I'd been doing her a favor by making that call. She just quietly started paying for the service she should have invested in years ago. Lauren texted me again not long after, and that conversation made my entire week. She told me Chloe had said, "We like when Auntie Emily visits, but we love when you stay over." I nearly choked on my coffee reading that because it was such a brutally honest kid comment. I told Lauren I wasn't even offended. Honestly, I was relieved. The kids deserve someone who actually wanted to be there for them, someone who had the training, energy, and patience to do the job well. Lauren was perfect for them, and the fact that Chloe and Tyler adored her only confirmed I'd made the right call during that Cancun week. What struck me most was how quickly everything shifted. For years, I'd been Jessica's crutch. Every time she and Mark wanted to go out, every time she needed a break, every time she overbooked herself or forgot to schedule childcare, I was the one she dumped everything on. I missed concerts, work opportunities, vacations, and countless nights out with friends because Jessica acted like her problems automatically became my responsibilities. I had normalized it, thinking that was what being a good sister meant. But now, with Lauren in the picture, I finally had my freedom. My weekends were mine again. My phone wasn't buzzing at odd hours with Jessica's guilt-tripping pleas. I wasn't expected to cancel plans at the last minute because she decided her time was more valuable than mine. The ripple effects went beyond just my schedule. My relationship with my parents improved too. Without Jessica constantly framing me as selfish whenever I set boundaries, they started seeing how unfairly I had been treated. Dad even joked one night that it took me hiring a nanny to get Jessica to act like an adult. Mom admitted she was proud of me for standing my ground, something I'd always struggled to do. And the best part? Jessica couldn't spin the narrative anymore because she had literally adopted my solution. As for Jessica, she remains oddly quiet about the entire thing. She has not apologized, but she also has not asked me for babysitting help in weeks. The closest thing I've gotten to an acknowledgement was a neutral comment at Sunday dinner when she said, The kids are doing great with their routine now. That was it. No thanks, no admission of guilt, no dramatic speech about how she'd been wrong. Just a vague statement meant to avoid giving me credit. But I don't even care anymore. I'm not looking for validation from her. The fact that she finally put her money where her mouth is and hired proper childcare is all the vindication I need. Chloe and Tyler are thriving, which makes the whole thing worth it. Every time I see them, they're happier, calmer, and more engaged than they used to be. They talk about their new crafts, their games with Lauren, and how she helps Chloe with her schoolwork. They love her so much, and I love seeing them excited and well cared for without feeling drained and resentful myself. When I visit, I get to just be their aunt, not their exhausted stand-in parent. I can take them out for ice cream, spoil them a little, and actually enjoy their company instead of worrying about bedtimes and meal prep. Jessica got what she deserved in the end, a dose of reality and a paid solution she should have invested in years ago. She got her wake-up call, and I got my life back. I've been going out more, traveling with friends, and saying yes to opportunities one used to decline out of obligation. For the first time in years, I feel like my time is truly mine. And honestly, watching this all unfold from a distance has been hilarious. Jessica spent weeks trying to frame me as the villain, and now she's quietly benefiting from the very thing she screamed at me for doing. So, is it revenge? I don't even think it qualifies. It feels more like karma doing its job. I didn't plot this outcome. I just stopped letting Jessica treat me like free labor, and the universe handled the rest. Now Chloe and Tyler are happier, Jessica is finally paying for the help she's always needed, and I have my freedom. If that's not the perfect ending to this saga, I don't know what is. Reddit, would you call that revenge or just karma doing its job?